Welcome to Lockdown with. Today I'm joined by Joe and Ken, the interracial couple behind the blog, The Interracial Space. In this podcast we talk about the conversations that have been sparked between them from the events of 2020, including Black Lives Matter, George Floyd and lockdown. 2020 brought out a lot of new conversations for them as a couple, which even after 8 years of being in a relationship, they had never addressed or thought of before. I love being able to speak to these two so openly about race, and I love the community they are trying to create on social media. So I hope you find this conversation really insightful. Without further ado, I'm Rebecca, and welcome to Lockdown with. Welcome to Lockdown with. So I'm joined by Ken and Joe, and I wanted to start by saying it was really nice to reconnect with Ken during lockdown because we haven't spoken for a few years, kind of here and there, and then we kind of reconnected, which was really nice because then I got to start speaking to Joe, and then I learned about this kind of passion project that you guys wanted to start, which was your blog space called the Interracial Space. So why don't you kind of tell everyone about you, and then how did you come up with this blog space idea?
So the Interracial Space was a blog that we've created and you've helped out with, and I guess the reason it came about was because of there was a George Floyd incident in America, which is like one of many, and obviously the protest that happened as a result of that, it was kind of happening over the country. And I think on social media it was really interesting because, we had a lot of friends, black and white, who were in support of the movement, and we had never really spoken about race explicitly between me and Joe. We're aware of it, we're aware that I'm black, Joe's white, and we're aware that I'm from a different country, but we never really spoke about explicitly how it affects us. What challenges might we experience, what difficulties might we have as a couple, as a family, talking to our families about it. And you, Joe, just kind of thought, should go online quickly, see if there's anything in terms of what's out there. Have other people kind of thought about this thing? Have other interracial couples spoken about it? Have they put stuff out there? And there was nothing of substance there. There was a lot of stuff about interracial love and kind of almost this taboo stuff, which in itself is an issue in itself. But there was nothing kind of about concrete relationship difficulties that people might have. Well, I say difficulties, just challenges that people will have in a relationship. And I think that was the birthplace for our idea. I think this was definitely Joe's idea. She was like, we should do it. And I think, Joe was the one to think about, actually, there's going to be things that we're going to struggle with, or we're going to have to deal with that family won't necessarily understand or get, or even think to us about. And that was the brainchild of it all, really.
Mm-hmm. And I think from my perspective, I had never had to think about racism or race before. Us as a couple, we've never really experienced any racism towards us. I remember there was one occasion when Ken and I were first going out, I think.
Yeah, it's been about 6 or 7 years ago.
And I had gone to visit him, and we were just walking down the road, and then a van drove past, and someone shouted out "white trash," and what's that about?
Yeah.
But that is the only experience of racism that I have ever experienced.
And that's a white person as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I just never, I never thought about it. I never had to think about it. So it wasn't brought to my attention until the George Floyd protests. And then I had a massive kind of, oh my gosh, what have I been ignoring or not noticing my whole life until now? So I kind of was like, right, we've got to do something about this. I've got to do something about this. And then yeah, that was the start of me realizing that as part of this relationship, what I had ignored and not paid attention to, I needed to work on.
And I think actually prior to George Floyd, you'd started reading a Callis book called Natives, and there was a particular chapter in it where there's I think a girl who's mixed race, and she talks about how she can't speak about race to the whites of her family. Like, they don't take it seriously. They're quite openly, I think if I remember correctly, they're quite openly, they kind of say racial slurs, don't really take things seriously. And the daughter in that chapter talks about, actually, she struggles to talk to her mum, who was white, and she couldn't actually connect with her. And also within the book as well, the author talks about, when he was up 5 or 6, maybe young, he realized that his mum was white and he wasn't, which I didn't think anything of it. I was like, yeah, our child's mixed race. I didn't think, this is gonna be an issue for us as a couple. But then Joe's like, Ken, no, you don't get it. Like, at some point, if you have kids, if you like to have kids, like, they will see me as not the same as them. And I think that was the first point, and that was probably like kind of October time. No, probably earlier than that, probably like February 2020, where we spoke about it. But again, that wasn't in much detail. And I think, like I said, the George Floyd thing and the protests have been occurring kind of throughout the country and America and stuff. And on social media, there's been a lot of change. I think that was when we spoke about it. That actually, this is something that we think needs to be spoken about, and we care quite a lot about it. So that was the first idea that Joan came up with, and then we kind of went from there.
So what's interesting is we were saying that Black Lives Matter kind of evoked some emotions, some feelings, and sparked these kind of conversations. And we heard that, Joe, you haven't really experienced racism apart from that one kind of racial slur. But Ken, what about your experience when you were growing up? Was there anything of note that you can speak about?
I mean,
how long have you got?
Okay.
With racism, when you're Black, it's not like one particular moment, or there's not. I mean, there are moments, but it almost happens so often that it becomes part of your lifestyle, which sounds ridiculous that you live with it, but it becomes so prevalent and you see it so often that actually, I wouldn't say I'm numb to it, but I expect it. And I think, so I never experienced people kind of saying the N-word or kind of calling me like animal, those sort of things. But the racism that I experienced was in like backhand comments or compliments, saying things or kind of what they expected of me. So I think that.
Do you have any examples of that?
So I think, so when I moved to Essex when I was younger, one of the first things that I experienced, and my brother said the same thing actually. He said, "Oh, you don't sound like you're Black," and it's like, well, how should a Black person sound? Is there one way a Black person should sound? Which is obviously not the case, but their mindset is that all Black people sound a particular way, all Black people talk a particular way, which is obviously meant to be negative and less than. Or, I got one said to me, "Oh, you're the nicest Black person I know." And I was like, "Well, have you met every Black person in the world?" I'm not representative for every Black person out there. So there was this notion that, and things like, can you rap, or can you dance, or a lot of things that was expected of me, which is like, why is it that you think I can rap or I can dance, or I'm good at sport? Just there are all these things that were just expected of me. Which I find, which was, I wasn't surprised by it, and I think I was like 13, 14 at the time. I wasn't surprised by it at all, but I was just very aware that actually this is what people think of how I should be. And this was even at my teachers and stuff. They'd be surprised that I'd do well. And I wasn't like the brainiest kid or whatever, but like they'd be quite surprised if I did quite well or anything like that. And it's just like, it was funny to watch their expectations of me, because they clearly thought that as a Black person, I should be a certain way, which is based off what the media tells them and what they see in the news, and based on that perception, which at 13, 14 is a lot to recognise. But at the same time, I was lucky that I had parents that were quite supportive and kind of made sure I wasn't getting into trouble. That actually just made sure made sure that I wasn't getting into trouble, all those things, but actually allowed me to kind of focus on my schoolwork and stuff, and actually allowed me to do things I wanted to do. So it's one of those things where you experience it so much that it's like there's not one experience, there's several that I could say or can list off, but it's that whole thing of people expecting less of you.
I think like one thing I noticed when kind of all the Black Lives Matter protests were starting, and like whenever I tried to mention kind of anything to do with racism to Ken, it didn't really hit me at the time because Ken's not really a talker to start with, but was if I mentioned something and Ken would say, well, that's not a surprise to me. It's not a surprise to me that more Black people are dying. Like things have never been different. And
it's what's been normal, and it's kind of like, why is that been normalised?
Absolutely. And I was just astounded by that. I was so outraged by the Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd incident, and I was just like, how can anyone do that? And showing that outrage, and I suppose compensating for what I had ignored in the past. And it just, when I reflected on it and just thinking about, well, to Ken, this is normal, and this is it was really sad and made me so angry that this is normal life. And having conversations with other friends who are Black as well, kind of having gone through trying to fight against racism and trying to speak against it, but they've just given up because nothing has changed. So then that's when kind of we were thinking, well, okay, I'm not Black, but I can use my platform to try and reach out to those people who are white, who maybe like me are outraged and want to do something about it, but might not feel comfortable talking to someone who's Black about it, might not feel that they would, like I have for so long, say the right thing. So yeah, I think that's just showing that how for Ken racism is normal, and being seen as kind of unequal is normal. So yeah,
no, definitely. I think what's different with the Black Lives Matter movement now, or the current social protesting, is that actually people recognizing that for change to occur, like on a substantial level, on an economic and a political level, white people have to play their part, because this has been an issue for how many years. You've had people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, who've tried to drive change, and they've been successful to a point. And it's like, well, actually, if we're going to get to the next point, which is like economic change, and also as well as kind of change in terms of at business level stuff, white people have to play their role, because actually they're the people who are in positions of power to employ people to actually change the status quo. And I think with that in mind, we've recognised that white people have to do their part if they care about trying to change the status quo. Then white people have to use their voice. I think you recognise that. Joe recognised that, and Joe was the one who said, actually, we should do this. We should do this blog. We should kind of talk about experiences, but we can use our platform. And I think I know you and some of your friends as well using your own space to do a lot of stuff. Which has been, I guess, nice to see, because actually it's rather than it just the Black person not a race again. Because if a Black person brings up race, people get uncomfortable because they don't deal with it. But if someone who looks at them brings it up, they've got to deal with it. They can't ignore, or they can try to ignore it because that's their prerogative. But if it's kind of for someone who looks like them, they then have to face it, and it can't just be brushed off or say, "Oh, it's happened 100 years ago," or one of their many comments.
I think there's a lot of learning to be done around it. I know for myself, I think the Black Lives Matter movement and the George Floyd incident was what really made me look at race, because it sounds really simple, but I've kind of grown up in central London. I've seen people of all different races. It was never, for me, I never saw it as an issue if someone was a different colour. Now that might not be the right thing to say, but I think a lot of people might resonate with that. And I think also we don't know necessarily the best way of being that kind of ally. like we've seen posts from like Adele, for example, who came out trying to like support Black Lives Matter, and she had like braids in her hair, and that had like a massive backlash. But it's not kind of included in education. And I think you said something about like the history of it. We don't really know about it. I'm speaking by myself here, but also I think a lot of people in the UK aren't really aware of that kind of background. And I was speaking to you guys about a film that I watched the other day, that kind of A United Kingdom, which I completely recommend, because it kind of brought home how these racial issues are so recent. And I couldn't get my head around the fact that the film was set in the 40s. And then, for example, someone I know had a Black stepdad in the 70s, and they were facing racial abuse, and the family were kind of were frowned upon, kind of thing. It happened so recently, but kind of I haven't had to deal with it in my lifetime, so I kind of can't see that history but want to understand it. And I think that's where a lot of people will be resonating with.
Yeah, I think I'll let you go.
Yeah, and I think from kind of a white perspective, like I'm completely the same, because I've never had to until recently, really. I've never had to think about it. I've always had Black friends, but because probably of where I grew up and where I went to school, and never having had the conversations about race, that's completely where my white privilege has just played a part, because I've never had to think about it, and I've never had to think about how I'm advantaged or someone else is disadvantaged. And even in conversations like with you, Ken, like a few years ago, like, and when I reflect on it now, like, it's completely embarrassing, like thinking about what some of the stuff that I said. But at the time, I thought it was completely normal.
Like, what have you got an example of what you were talking about?
What you
I know, it's so actually like, this big Black guy came up to me, and I was like, and I said, why did this guy? Why did you say he's Black? And she didn't twig why she was saying it, but that sort of comment is ingrained in society. So, and ingrained in the media, how the media report stories. And it's like, actually, the person's colour is irrelevant of what was happening, but there was a need, to I guess, there was the need to get it out, almost, in terms of, I'm not sure that's the right way to put it, but that felt so normal for you to say that.
Yeah, it's because of, like, I suppose that subconscious image of, for me, I was trying to portray how I felt in danger. And there's that stereotype of a big Black man being dangerous. So in me telling this story, I wanted to try and get Ken to understand how I felt in danger. So if I say a big Black man, then that, for me, because I'm tiny, so then having a big Black man come towards me, that portrays danger. So I think.
So you were saying this to Ken?
Yeah.
Which I find so funny, because Ken is like 6'2" and he's Black. And he's the least scary person I know.
Yeah, it's so true. But I just think things like that, and now I catch myself. And if I was going to say, I was talking to, I don't know, a friend who was Black, I would catch myself and say, I don't need to say that I'm talking to a Black person or a white person. I was just talking to someone.
Said person, yeah.
Yeah, it's strange. I've definitely noticed that, and I've tried to call myself out on it, or I've said it, Mum, why have you said that? Or like, why have I said? Because the thing is, this is the thing, I think we don't realise when we might be using that kind of stereotype as a way of explaining something, like those hidden meanings, like a big Black guy, that has a meaning because of what we've been told in these stereotypes, and we're all kind of guilty, and it's just kind of like, why do we do that? It's about catching yourself out.
But it's so ingrained within how we live. That's why these things happen. That's why that people expect Black people to be X, Y, or Z, because that's what they've been taught to believe. They know, the school system doesn't teach us anything different. Black history at any formal level hasn't been taught whatsoever. All people know about Black history is a slave trade, which I think the interesting post realized that Black history isn't no, the slavery isn't black history. That's white history.
It's white history. I've seen that.
Because I posted it the other day or shared it because black
probably
history,
from your account.
because black history is so much more than that. But there's only one snapshot that's been taken, and that's been told, which is, I think is the problem, because we don't talk about it, especially in this country. They talk about race a lot in America, which give them credit. At least they talk about it. Whereas in England, just don't speak about it. I think that classic English thing is you don't talk about things that are awkward, uncomfortable. You have to stiff up a lip and get on with it, which has shown it hasn't really solved anything. It's just perpetuating the same issues that we've had for years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been posting all about this recently because I've just not really just found out about it, but I think the killings over in America are so all over social media, and we're all focused on that, aren't we? It's all happening over in America because, like you say, Ken, that we're not talking about it over here. We don't know what's going on, and it's come out recently about how black men are dying in police custody here. So we need to start talking about that as well, because we continue to kind of think, oh, it happens elsewhere, it doesn't happen here. And try and keep ourselves and make ourselves different. It's like me saying, this big black guy came at me today. It's keeping things separate and different. And it's the same. We think that black people are being killed over in America, but maybe that's not happening here.
Yeah, it's not a problem
because we don't talk about it. But we need to start talking about it and start thinking about just making ourselves aware and focusing on what's closer to home as well, even though that's really difficult.
Definitely.
And going back to you guys, so you were saying that Black Lives Matter kind of sparks all these different conversations within your own relationship, and that was something that wasn't there kind of 8 years ago. You kind of didn't really speak about that. So what kind of conversations, because those are the type of blogs that you've been writing about, right? So tell us, what have you been writing about?
The last,
this is just the beginning.
The last one we've just, I guess, posted quite a few weeks ago was about choosing where to live, and I think
which I found so interesting, because it blew my mind. I was like, are you really thinking about this stuff? But it makes so much sense.
Because so we so I think we started saying 6, I think a few years ago. So I think me and Joe have been together 2 years at this point. And Joe was like, "Oh, Ken, would you ever live where we were?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. It's far too white." I was like, "No chance." And in my mind, that was just like a normal. I was like, "No, I'm not living here. Like, why would you do that?" And my thinking was, and still is, because I grew up in London, so I was like 14 and 6, and I was like, and I saw the massive difference between living in London with people who look like me, people who I could talk to, I can be myself around, and not kind of always control my personality to an extent, or express myself in a certain way. And I could be my most authentic self in London, and have fun and not think about things. Whereas when I lived in Essex, it was like I knew that there wasn't many black people in the area. I knew that there was expectations upon me to act a certain way or behave a certain way, and that if I did X, Y, or Z, that would be, he's like that because he's black, or it would feed into that negative stereotype. And so I was like, if we have kids, I want to be in an environment where our kids are around people who look like them. They can express themselves. They can share things with people who understand what they're into. They can talk about things they're into. They can feel comfortable, with the people around them. And when I lived in Essex, I definitely didn't feel comfortable I knew that things were different when I was in Essex. When I was in London, it was like,
because so you were living in London, then you moved to Essex, and how many black children were there in your school?
So in my school, my school was like 2,000 people. I think it was 15 black kids in my whole school. And I think it was like 4 in my year. So I think it was a couple in year 11, a couple in year 8. No, I was in year 8, a couple in year 9 maybe. And you knew it. It was a thing. Like we all knew it. We spoke about it, but we'd all look at each other and say, we'd know what was going on. Like we knew things were, we knew there was a different connect between us and them. And when we would hang out together, it was just it was different. It was a different sort of atmosphere. It was just it was relaxed and natural. Whereas when I was with my white friends, they were good friends, and they had good intentions, but they'll still say stuff. I'm thinking, no, you can't say that to me. And I call them out on it as well. But it was always that sort of, yeah, you're cool, but when I leave here and you're 11, I'm not going to talk to you ever again. And out of all my friends who I hung out with at my school in Essex, I talked to one of them still. So it was just a different energy. So for us, you know, when we have kids, and when we have a family as well, like we want to be around people who get it, because, you know, my brother's wife's black, my niece and nephew are black, so therefore they can understand it to an extent, but they're not going to understand the lens of having mixed race kids. They're not going to understand the potential emotional difficulties, I don't like that word, the different challenges that might occur when you have to deal with your child recognizing that actually they're half black and they're half white. Actually, they're a mixture of both. And so this is why we kind of create a blog, because we recognize this is a thing, and actually we want to create a space where people can, it sounds like they can go people they can relate to, or they can post like useful resources. So actually, if other people are having similar difficulties or who are similar to us, they can kind of just share it. So that's the idea, and that's kind of yeah.
Joe, where was your mind at? So Ken had been like to you, no, we're not living in this place. I want to live somewhere more multicultural.
Flat out,
you have a choice in this.
I just thought he didn't want to be like near my parents at the time. I was like, oh, fair enough. He wants us to have our own life, be far away enough from family, to like bring up our kids, have our own life. So I didn't get it until I started reading last year, and I started reading perspectives of mixed race people. So at that point I was like, oh my gosh, like when you read some of the stories, and also with how recent some of those stories are, and considering how I come from such a middle class white family, knowing full well that it could be possible that through no fault of their own, but that my family might make those kind of microaggressions or subconsciously just, I don't know, ignore when our mixed race children get picked up on at school or in public, and starting to read how difficult some people find it to kind of find their identity as they grow up and almost ignore one part of it. And I think a lot of people say kind of how growing up it's been quite useful for them if they're in a majority white area to ignore their black side and their black heritage. And thinking about that and thinking about how, like after reading Akala, realizing that our kids will not be able to identify with me and relate to me wholly, and to some extent Ken as well, I then realized, okay, we need to be towards London, like it's going to be best for them, and we want as well, like we really want our kids to be able to experience as much of their African heritage as they can. Like I'm gonna have to learn how to make African curries that Ken's mum can make beautifully, but
why can't Ken make the curries?
I mean, I can do, to be fair. It's also my to-do list as well, to be fair. I do a lot of cooking in the house, though. Well, thank you. I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Both of you need to do this.
It's joint activity.
But
we just want them to be able to access as much of their heritage as they can, because like I recognise that I won't be able to give them that, and to some extent Ken will, but it will be a nice blend of all sorts of history and traditions, I think. So it wasn't until probably like 6 years on that I understood why Ken was saying that about choosing where to live, but now I realise how important it is.
And I mean, before the call I was even just thinking about how the UK is so geared as a white country. I mean, in terms of the things like, I saw a post a few months ago about how you can only get plasters in like white skin shades, you know, like the skin color plasters, for example.
Didn't even think about that.
But it's because someone came out with a color range so you could get black plasters now, like all the different shades. Because it's not skin color plasters if it's not your skin color, but also things like dolls, for example, like dolls are primarily white for children. What about like black? It's just how society's here is geared up to that. And I guess that kind of fits into your kind of choosing where to live, but choosing how to bring up children in general. It's just a whole new thing that I've obviously never had to think of here.
Yeah,
definitely.
it's so true. And it's realizing that as well, isn't it? Because like not having those things available, like we've gone through a whole process, and Ken, you have, with like growing your hair and things like that, of how you know, we need to celebrate, you know, Ken's blackness, our kids' blackness. In our society, it's very much play it all down. Like if you don't fit into the white items in the shop, then you just got to go with it. There isn't another choice. Whereas, you know, we want to be celebrating as much as we can. Like I bought the top that Ken is wearing at the moment says black by popular demand, and I want to get our kids loads of stuff like that. You know, I want them to be proud of being black, and yeah, we just want to make sure that we encourage that as much as possible, and yeah, have those conversations with other parents as well, because we've on our Instagram page, like people have shared really interesting stories about kind of bringing up mixed race kids and challenges that they've had, and we've seen posts on Facebook about some comments people may make to families in restaurants and things like that, and just small things that, you know, to the people that are doing them, like moving away to a table further away might seem very small and insignificant to them, but that can really
That's a major thing.
A child. And although I know that if that happened, if it was Ken, he just probably would ignore it or do the opposite and make something of it, but in a very clever way. But yeah, I think there's something about knowing that Ken and adults who come up against racism can deal with it, and and kids are vulnerable. So I think it's thinking about helping our kids to be proud of who they are as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also having that conversation, not necessarily with our kids, but actually just in general, like just getting it out there. I found one of the most interesting things about the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's still ongoing. A lot of people talk like it's in the past, but you know, there's a lot of things happening out there that people should, you know, take heed to and kind of look at. One of the most interesting things I found, especially with like social media, because at the time, and even still now, we still post quite a lot, don't we, in terms of like pictures and stuff that people post out there. And what I found really interesting was I found out a lot about people in general, like, you know, the people who you were cool with or you're friends with, and you found out a lot more about people in terms of how they dealt with stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found from white people in general was, I'm not racist. Like, you know, they felt like they were being personally attacked, and it was a case of making themselves a victim. And it was like, well, this isn't about you as an individual. This is about this whole society thing of how Black people aren't treated fairly, aren't given the same rights as white people. And we spoke about this. It's like when someone wants to get education on it, are they to ask me because I'm Black, I can tell them, or actually go educate yourself? Because in this day and age, there's more than enough information out there for you to go and read and go educate yourself. And I think Joe mentioned it as well when you said, like, you know, Ken, if I'm asking too many questions, or, you know, let me know. You know, like, I don't know, kind of almost like burden you with all your questioning.
Yeah.
Because I recognise that I need to process. Sometimes I need to process things myself.
It was a whole process that I took a lot from social media. So there were some people like Brandon K. Good and Emmanuel Acho who were posting videos. Brandon K. Good is in an interracial relationship, and it wasn't, because it was a process for both of us, wasn't it? Because obviously you had to deal with kind of the shame that you faced for years of being Black.
Just dealing with like people's nonsense all the time.
Yeah, and me trying to learn, but also not place all the responsibility on Ken, who was suffering at the time, to educate me. And I think that was a process for both of us, wasn't it? Because we both had friends who were texting us and asking us questions, and we were trying to be really helpful. And I know Ken was trying to help as much as possible. But Yeah, there were all sorts of kind of reactions and.
But yeah, and I think it was that thing of like, if you really want to know, you can educate yourself. Like if like someone didn't know something, anyone or they tried to educate themselves about it, and still didn't get it, that's fair enough. Because you know what, you're trying. I get that. But it was when people would flat out wouldn't even try to understand it, play the victim. It's like, I'm not gonna waste my energy trying to explain to you why people who look like me have been getting attacked and, you know, arrested and mistreated for centuries. I'm not gonna use all my energy with that. And I realize that there's a point where actually sometimes I'm not gonna get involved with people because actually it's exhausting. Like all race and as often as I deal with it, and still do, it's exhausting. You don't want to talk to people about it sometimes, you know, and
especially when people don't get it as well,
or when
they're
they don't
trying to
it.
ask you for reassurance.
Yeah, and and so I'm not gonna give that reassurance because
I think that was quite common during the Black Lives Matter, because I think you're right. It's not right to play victim, but I also think it was necessary for it to be such a big thing. But because it was so big and so intense, I mean, I had Black friends messaging me and being like, "This is too intense for me." Like, I know it's like trying to support me, but like it's too much. And I was there going, I do feel like I'm doing the right thing, but I feel like I'm in the wrong. And I didn't want to victimize it. This isn't about me trying to victimize it, but it felt like overnight we're expected to kind of support it and get on board and protest. And this isn't to like get, you know, say anything bad about Black Lives Matter protests, but it was a very intense kind of few days where kind of everyone went to the nearest Black friend and went, what's going on? Like, how can I help you? Do you need me? And then you saw brands kind of reaching out to any celebrity that was Black and going, we need you to be part of our campaign. Do you want to work for us? Do you want to wear our shoes? Do you want to model our watches? So I think the intensity of it caused such like a reactive response where it's like, we need to understand everything now. We need to ask every Black person everything.
It's so true. And I think I'm going to keep going back to Brandon K. Good, because his explanations of things are just they're just so useful. But I think one thing that was really, really important from what he was saying and as he explained it, and he was saying that we see ourselves as, you know, we like to think of ourselves as a nice person. So then hearing that actually we might not be quite as nice as we think we are, through no fault of our own, because we're not aware of it because of white privilege. But when we hear that actually we have been contributing to this suffering of Black people and racism, unaware of it, but still having to face that is massive, and it's not something that's going to sit comfortably with us. Hence why we'll go and do everything we can as quickly as possible, like reach out to, you know, the Black friend that we have and say, are you okay? Can I do anything to help?
It's funny actually, because they were doing things to try and, you know, implement change for people of color, Black people, and they were telling me, it was like, I don't work with you, but well done. It was like, and like, I get the sentiment and I can appreciate what they're trying to do, but it was like, why are you telling me? You don't need to tell me every single good thing you've done. I get what they're trying to do, but at the same token is that if you truly care about this and you're doing it for yourself, you don't need to share it with me. You know, fair play to you, well done. But it's like, at some point, this is your responsibility as well. You haven't got to share everything with me. I am not the poster boy for Black people, and nor is any other Black person. But it was definitely a lot of that going on in terms of, oh, I've done this. Oh yeah, is that okay? It's like, I don't know. Like I'm not no master on it. I've lived the experiences, but it's like, it was this thing of people wanting reassurance, and it's like, if you want reassurance and you want a pat on the back, you're not going to get it, because Black people have been living through this, and Black people of colour have been living through this for centuries. So it's not been an overnight thing. But if you truly care about it, you can then use your platform to do it. And I think that's what I guess that's what we look at now, is actually, what can we do about it? Because, you know, we can add our bit to the conversation, because there's loads of conversations to be had, but we can definitely add our bit to it and kind of go from there. Really.
I think you were right though when you were saying in, like, for example, in a restaurant, say if someone moves a table away from you, it's literally just about calling people out. And even, for example, we were speaking about earlier how when you describe someone, oh, this big black guy came over to me, it's calling yourself out on it. It's kind of these small things. But I think for me, Black Lives Matter showed how systemic the racism is, which is something that I personally can't change myself, but it's kind of all those incremental challenging the status quo. Why do we do that? Why do we do this? Challenging what we've said, that's fine. Why have we normalized that? And then trying to change that systemic racism. And once again, I'll go back to that film because honestly, I love that. Did you watch that film yet?
No, I haven't seen it
Yeah.
yet.
You've got to watch it.
We've seen like parts of it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's on my
it
film
looks
list.
really good. Yeah.
Like-
I think the problem is that when anything like
It's
I'm so early in my journey of like trying to kind of work on myself and catch myself and not be angered through the roof whenever I see racism. So whenever I watch a film like that, I get so angry and just like completely overreact, and then I'll probably like end up like venting to Ken for hours afterwards. So I think I need to kind of work on my.
This is one of those films.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of doubt. I know, I completely recommend it.
No,
we will watch it, but like I've noticed throughout this whole thing that like even thinking about like some people that like messaged Ken, I got so angry about some of the messages, and maybe I'm overcompensating for my lack of awareness and responsibility. But yeah, I'm still in the phase where if anyone or anything challenges Ken or potential kids in the future, I will go.
She's ready to throw down. She's ready to throw down.
Yeah.
It's great.
We've already had the conversation that if Ken is ever pulled over by police,
to shut up.
I need to just shut up and get my phone out, which is going to be really hard.
It sounds silly, but like
that is my role.
Yeah, like
yeah.
I think it's that thing of because when we watch films that about race, they're heavy films and it's a lot to watch and it's difficult to watch. And
can I just interrupt right there though? Because I was thinking the other day that it's so frustrating that all of these films with black main actors are such negative and racist films.
It's true.
Like, this is what's very frustrating. There is a lot at the moment that is changing that, but there's such a narrative about whenever someone who is black in a film, like main lead, it's often and it's often like this really negative story, and hence why maybe I feel so angry about watching them.
It's that thing, and I think they are heavy films. So I think we pick and choose when we watch them.
Yeah, we definitely enjoy them.
Yeah, it's definitely always a talking point. But we definitely pick and choose when we watch them because it's a lot. And it's like sometimes they're difficult to watch. Well, they are difficult to watch and it's difficult to experience. I remember I had a really funny conversation with Rob the other day, and I was like, "Have you read a Carla or the few books I'm reading?" And he said, "Ken, I can't read this book at the moment because I'm not in the right job to be angry at white people." Read this book today or anytime soon because I work a lot of white people and you just get angry by it. And I get that because when you read these stories, you see yourselves in them. You feel their pain, and it's like it's a very weird thing you live in a society where people don't like you, not intentionally, but they will think a certain way about you, and it's a very hard thing to deal with because you're as a black person you're aware of it. It's a very tricky thing to deal with that all the time, and it's one of those things where like I've never really thought about it until recently. And I think we were talking one night. I was just telling Joe about stories where like I've experienced racism like in so many different ways. It's like
and
it's
this
exhausting.
Was the first time, wasn't it? In
first time I ever spoke about it.
That we'd ever spoken about it.
Yeah. And it's like I think I was listing off like reels of like story after story about
it was horrible.
What happened, this happened, like, and I never really thought about it. I never had really thought about it or broke it down. I knew it happened, but I was just like, it's exhausting. So therefore, when we come to watch films and stuff, we have to be in the right mood. Yeah. So we're going through on BBC the Small Act series, which is like that 5 short films, kind of set, I guess, each decade. It's the black stories about black people, and we're picking and choosing. There's 5 of them. We've only watched 2, and they came out in December.
Yeah.
But it's like we have to be in the right place to watch them. Otherwise, it's like, whew, get the tears start streaming, or Joe gets angry, and it's like, oh, that's our film Fridays are end because we're in a feed.
I think, it's horrible to have all of these conversations and to kind of hear what you've gone through, and I just want to, like, obviously, absolutely, like, that is a massive thing for us to process and for us to get used to. I think from as well, like, I don't want to say a positive thing or a highlight.
Silver lining.
From living in a majority white area, but seeing kind of Ken when he sees other black people, it's just fantastic, because there's this thing called the nod. So
what?
Won't know a black person that he walks past. He won't know them, never seen them before. But there's this unwritten rule that you will nod. So we could be walking into town, walk past another black man or
a mixed race person.
Yeah, and it's just this thing that it's the nod, which I think is, and I've said to Ken before, I was like, I think this is great. Obviously,
I think that's great.
Horrible place, and a really, a place of suffering, and I want to connect with another black person when I see them, because there aren't many black people around in this area. But it's great to see. I've said to Ken, I want a nod, but obviously, maybe I have the white privilege, so I won't get the nod.
Maybe if you live in Africa, you can get a nod, but for now, no nods for you.
Yeah,
it's a thing. I think it depends where you are. Like, when I lived in London, it wasn't really a thing because we're everywhere, and like, there's loads of people in London. Like, it's not really a thing. But when as soon as you move further and further away from the capital and kind of to more kind of rural areas, you notice the black people in the area, and there is a nod. There's a connection. Like, it's a very weird thing, and I don't know where I learned it. I just started doing it, and it's that thing where you just recognize, I see you, I know you're here. Like
that. What made me think of that is because, like, talking about things that we've been watching, and often kind of thinking about the stereotypes of black actors and things, but the show Blackish kind of is so educational and it's funny, and it makes light of these kind of stereotypes and also lessons that people have to learn. But it just reminded me of that, because I thought that it's quite nice that that's actually been kind of highlighted, and that's a really nice thing to see. In and amongst all the kind of the sadness and the suffering.
We'd recommend Blackish as a TV program. I think it's great.
Oh, it's so funny.
I think it's a comedy, which is good, but it's about a black family who live in a very middle class. So, and it deals with, I guess, being black and money, and their kids go to private school and stuff and all that sort of stuff. But it's like how they live their life, and the different, very small things that aren't a big deal to white people or to anyone are actually a thing. And there's an episode called The Nod. And it's been really cool. Me and Joe got to watch together, which has been almost like the funny thing is that when you first started watching it a couple of years ago, you weren't really into it.
I didn't like it. I was like, I don't really find this funny. And
I don't see the point. But then we started watching it again, probably kind of at the start, before the Black Lives Matter movement started to occur in England. And Joe got it. Like, she recognised, okay, I see why this show is important, or shows like this are important, because it's all about representation. But that's something that
it's great.
It's great, yeah. It's a little thing we have, which is good. In amongst it all.
Amazing. I did want to go back to your other blog, which was your Christmas blog, because I feel like that blog really kind of encapsulated two cultures coming together, and a key event in the UK that it caused maybe some issues. Is that the right word? Like, talk to us about your Christmas.
I think Christmas in general is drama. Like, I think Christmas as a holiday, it creates a lot. I think it's in general. Like,
but Ken, you don't like Christmas, so Scrooge over here. Let's speak to Joe about it.
It's not that I don't like Christmas. I just think you talk to people.
It's been different though, hasn't it? It's been different for you growing up as it has me growing up.
Yeah, but not even me. But like, you talk to people. I got to buy this turkey. I got all this family coming around. Like, I'm like, it's supposed to be fun. Why are you stressed about buying this turkey that's the size of my head? Like,
the materialism
booking
side.
like 50. It's just like, what is going on? So Christmas, the concept and as a thing is I love Christmas in my own way, but it's very dramatic. This is my point of view on it. But yeah.
Jo, your view differs quite a bit, doesn't it? You prefer Christmas?
Yeah. I have always really liked Christmas. It's always been a time of celebration, of spending time with family. It's always been a really special time. Like my birthday, both of our birthdays are in December as well. So it's like, oh yeah, all the presents and, you know, all the celebrations. And but speaking to Ken about his Christmas,
I mean, Christmas was different. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, culturally very different. And like,
so how was it different?
I think, I mean, it's similar in terms of we would both spend it with family. It's very much a family holiday. But for instance, yeah, with my family, it would be, you know, wake up, open presents, all eat together, you know, go for walks. Like literally, it would be work out what's on telly and all watch the telly together, like games. And it would be like that for, you know, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, probably the day after. And yeah, I've always like loved that. But yeah, your Christmas has been different.
I think my Christmas is different here because I'm from Sierra Leone, so like I remember spending Christmas in Sierra Leone, which was amazing because we went to the beach all day and had like a massive party. So
I love the sound of that.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
so, it sounds great.
So Christmas in Sierra Leone is very different to Christmas here because my parents are used to kind of being in a hot country where they can do a lot more. So we never, like, you know, we had, I think we did the big dinner. I think our family was there for about 2 weeks. Like, we had loads of people come around and stay around ours, which I love because I got to see my cousin. We'd hang out all day and for the next 2 weeks and stuff. But it wasn't necessarily a massive emphasis. Get my words out on. It was more about kind of just spending time together and the food, which I think. But there was this thing about Christmas in England is very different to Christmas back in Sierra Leone. So I think it wasn't given the same, you know, status or the same pedigree. I don't know if that's the right word, but it wasn't given the same amount of thought. Here it was when I had Christmas in Sierra Leone. So I think there's a big difference in kind of how I experienced it, and also as well, like we went out for dinner on Christmas Day with your family. I don't even get why you go out for Christmas dinner. Like, we went to a restaurant. I was like, "Who's working Christmas Day?" It was like, "Who's so?" I was baffled.
Hey, I enjoyed it.
It was good food. Don't get me wrong. But I was like, why am I wearing this? Why am I just as smart? Why am I wearing this tie? That was but it was so foreign. I just didn't get it. Like, I should be on my sofa with my pajamas on, eating like loads of food and just sleeping.
But also, like, our families are quite different. So, like, with my family, like, it's all together in the living room all the time, like from waking up to the meal time, to having the meal together, and then until we go to bed. Whereas with your family, like, you'll all be there, but you'll all be doing your different stuff.
Yeah, but I've got a bigger family than you. Like, so there's two brothers and a sister, mum and dad. So like there was already 6 of us in the house. Then you had my cousins and my aunts. So it's like, I think because we're in a house together or in a flat together, it's like at some point we all need our own space. So like we're together but not together, which is like a very different, I guess, vibe. Whereas like with your family, it's like we're together.
Yeah. So when it was your mum over for Christmas with your little brother, we only have a little flat.
Yeah.
So it was.
It's a lot of people for a small space. Which.
Tell us about this. Tell us about this first Christmas together, because I know you wrote about it in the blog, and I thoroughly enjoyed editing that section. Tell us what the first Christmas together was like.
Is that your house? Was it? Is that my? Oh.
Do you mean this Christmas just gone?
I think it was the first Christmas that you had together, or.
The first Christmas we had together was at your house, wasn't it? Was at your parents' house, and then so that would have been Christmas 2019. So yeah, that was when we were at yours, and Christmas. Oh no, I don't even know anymore.
It's all muddled up.
It's all a blur.
Yeah, are you talking about when we had Ken's mum over for Christmas? Okay. So
you can go.
Oh, I don't know if that's maybe a good idea or not. Obviously, trying to because Ken is so laid back, and Ken will just go with the So if he's been at mine for Christmas, he'll just like get on with it and do like he'll just go with the flow. Whereas
you like a plan.
Yeah, I like a plan. And
the plan was upset.
Yeah.
To put it nicely. The plan was.
It was just different for me. I think I'm not as accommodating as Ken, and when it came to kind of having a different sort of Christmas, so the lunch being like ready dead on 12, and then we kind of ate, and then everyone went off on their separate ways. Like Ken's mum went back to bed for a nap, and we just kind of sat there and we'd missed the TV that I'd earmarked that I wanted to watch.
The Vickery Dibley one.
I don't even know. But yeah, so it just kind of, and then we got into like an argument around our wedding and the clothes that we were going to wear. And it's just, it wasn't the best Christmas.
It was all right. It was an experience. It was an experience.
Yeah.
We're still together.
I think we went to bed early that Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, Christmas is eventful.
But that's also the thing. Like we had this conversation where we were like, so the whole time that we've been together, our parents have met each other once.
Once. That was our engagement party.
Which was our engagement party last year. So we'd have been together like, I don't know, like 7 years or something. And and we honestly said like we didn't think our parents would actually meet until the day we got married, just because everyone's spread out, but also they're so different. Like it seems like such an effort to get everyone together that maybe it's just best if they don't meet until we get married. Like
they're very it's that thing. It's two different worlds, isn't it? It is like it's completely different worlds. And I was talking to one of my other friends whose parents have met loads. Like one of my other couple friends, their parents meet all the time and they do a lot together. And it's like I can't picture it. I couldn't see like my parents, Joey's parents, and us just kind of beating out. And
I'm sure it would be fine.
I'm sure, it would be.
It's probably something that we just worry about.
Yeah, I don't think we're right, but I think because of where we've lived and we've moved a lot, and kind of where my parents' space and your parents' space, it hasn't naturally come together. But yeah, there's that thing with how these two worlds going to clash.
Yeah, I feel like we'd be babysitting if.
Trying to force.
Yeah.
Yeah, just trying to direct it to a smooth travel. But that made no sense.
But what I really like is throughout this, we've kind of spoken about how two different cultures coming together and how you're both really keen on like your children in the future being able to understand the kind of white side, but also the black side, but also understanding the history anyway, and making sure they're feeling their culture and feeling at home and understanding all different sides of your children. But also, even with this Christmas, you were saying, your family's in two different areas. But what I really like the conclusion of your blog, which was, well, actually, we have two different cultures coming together for Christmas, but we get to now decide what we want our Christmas to look like, and we could take the things that we love from each side of that and make our own Christmas. And I think that's great going forward in everything. And I think it's a lot of couples who are interracial, have different cultures, are going to have to kind of experience, and that will resonate with them quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Even with like one of my closest friends, so she's Greek, and so she's no relationship, and they're both white, but she's half Greek. And it's like, actually, she's like, I see your point. Like, even like the Greek side to her, then they can possibly embrace that a bit more and do that. And so yes, for us there's a race thing, but there's definitely a cultural aspect as well, and just sharing that and kind of bringing part of your tradition to the table, which I think is just nice for everyone, really, because people get what they want, but they get to show themselves and express themselves as well. So yeah, which is nice to hear from other people as well. They're not just talking completely dreadful and making things up.
Yeah, it's nice to hear as well, like because obviously like we don't know, and we didn't even think that we knew that many interracial couples, but actually we do.
Yeah,
we know a few, and that's nice for us to hear as well. Like it's like, oh yeah, actually you have these problems too.
Yeah,
not problems, but experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes problems with family. But yeah, and it's just really nice to hear about other people's experiences and maybe how they've come through in like what they do now. And
it's true, definitely.
I think it's
been
really
fun.
nice to hear.
Yeah, I think that's why we've done it, really, just to kind of get the conversation out there, because if you don't talk about it, nothing changes. And I think like for me, like talking about race, which I've had to speak about, it wasn't I thought I needed to speak about, but actually talking about it, so joking, I understand where I'm coming from, or recognizing actually I don't want to talk about, like, I don't want to talk about it today. I've had enough. Like today's my day off, sort of thing. I can be an activist tomorrow or Friday, whatever. Or today, I'm just going to have the time off just to say I'm good, because actually, if you don't talk about things in all forms of life, relationships, whatever it is, things don't change. If you want things to change, you've got to educate yourself and talk, really.
Yeah, and I like the group that you're creating, and the fact that you're finding people who are also interracial couples that you kind of didn't really kind of click on to. You're like, oh yeah, we do know more people. But also I think you said that you've had some comments on your blog that from people that you don't even know, and your blog's kind of reached further than you thought it has.
We've got to China. I'm guessing, I'm thinking that was an accidental one, but we've had.
But hey, we'll take it.
I'm taking China, yeah. We've had a few people I think we had 2 in Nigeria, like 3 or 4 in Ireland, quite a few in America. I think I say 15 odd or so from America, and then the majority from Britain. But yeah, it's just interesting to see, people just looking at it, because we have this idea, this is a really good idea, this is amazing, but it's very different. Yeah, it's very different to put in pen to paper or keypad to paper, if you want to call it that.
Well, what's your vision for it? How big are you thinking?
Ooh,
that's a good question. Oh, as big as it can be, I guess.
No.
Like when Ken said about someone in China, I was like, right, let's get to work. But yeah, what about you?
I think I guess the vision we have when we spoke about is almost it being like a legit interracial space or social space where people say, I'm looking for my kid's hair is blah 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 blah. Can anyone recommend anything? And
I'm gonna need that advice.
And people saying, oh yeah, try this and this. Like, so people can just, if they want advice, they can literally go to our page and say, oh yeah, they recommend this or this, or so I see it as almost like a community of people going, actually, I might put this out there, see if anyone else has gone through this, and they can go find the answer, because we tried to find that and there was nothing there. And so I think that's what I think we want to create our own community, or create a community where people can go to for advice, because we speak about, if we have kids and stuff, and if you have a daughter, like doing their hair, because their hair, so it'd probably be a mixture of our hair, but if their hair's like mine, which is really coarse and, really curly, I don't just do hair in general. I don't just do like a black girl's hair, and neither is Joe. So that we're gonna have to learn, we're gonna have to figure that out, like, learn how to do that. That's the thing we're gonna have to, a challenge that we're gonna have to, deal with. And other people are gonna experience it or have experienced it. So it's like, we want to be able to say, try this and this. It might not work, but
I think it's a forum to be able to speak to other people like us, isn't it? And
kind of say, this is what I'm thinking, or have you guys experienced this, or what would you do about this, or have you got any books about X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, but I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's connecting to people who are similar to us. Like, just like, you have the nod, like interracial couples, like, they're out there, and it's going to be really good to connect to other people and share stories as well, because there will probably be couples who have experienced a lot different to us, like being together, and we've been really fortunate.
100%. Our family's been great. Like they've had no issues with you or with me, and so we've been lucky in that. We've got loving, supportive families where I know that that's not always the case. We've read stories where there's been, there's stories out there where like a white woman's got pregnant by a black man, and the white person's family's abandoned them. They brought shame to their family, which is ridiculous. But and that's not. These are things that have happened recently. We're not talking like 100 years ago. We're talking 5, within our lifespan. So we're very lucky in what we experienced. We've had a lot of love and support. So we recognise we're very blessed and to have that.
And so we do want to get all of people's voices out there, because, you know, it's not just our stories. You know, we've spoken to people about getting their stories out there, because, again, it's a space for people to talk about what's on their chest and get stuff out there. So that's the plan.
Yeah, I really like
See
that.
how
I think
it
it's
goes.
important, especially because you said you couldn't really find anything similar. So I think it's amazing to kind of create something like that. So I hope people that listen to this, it resonates and they kind of want to be part of it. So, I mean, in terms of your blogs, have you got any more topics that you are lining up that you're waiting to talk about?
Yeah.
Well, I think, we really want to kind of get down in words our process of, processing what happened to George Floyd and the BLM protests, because we went to a protest as well. So I think being able to talk about our experiences and how we've been processing racism, and how I've been processing white privilege and things like that. I think that's going to be really important to get down there. But yeah, thinking about having mixed race kids, thinking about what we're going to have to prepare ourselves for. Some fun stuff, some funny stuff, probably stuff on like films and TV shows. But yeah, we've got a whole list, haven't we? Is there anything else that you can?
I think you posted something. Actually, I remember, Becca, you messaged me about it as well. You posted a picture on your personal Instagram, and it was I think I came home from work one day, and you basically, I'm sick and tired of all like these negative stories about Black people. I'm sick and tired of these negative things, and you post a picture of me in it, and you were saying how proud you were of me and what I've done. And I think that in itself is a blog, or is a story to tell, because actually it's, you know, yes, I've lived with racism and I will continue to live with it, but it's also how you live with it through me, because you'll never really understand it, but it's how you support, that's how you supported me and how you've continued to support me, and also give me that space to kind of just, if I'm going to be moving for a day or so, just let me have at it and let me go, and like just recognizing how to, you know, allyship, if you want to call it that, how to support someone and be with someone, which is in itself its own topic, which is hard to put into words. So good luck with that.
I see you're giving me the responsibility.
I mean, it makes you put the really good picture. You put the picture and the words down, which are amazing. So I think that's what we want to talk about. But I think there's loads out there. I think there's
so much.
There's stuff that will come up. That will come up organically.
Also like our interests. Like, you know, like, we love our music and we love dancing. And, you know, stuff like that. So
our wedding's gonna be interesting one. That's gonna be a vlog, I reckon. Yeah. As soon as that gets sorted out. But yeah, no, that's gonna be a vlog. Because
so loads of stuff.
Yeah, I think whatever comes to mind really. But
that's super exciting, and I like hearing Joe's point of view, because I learn through experiencing and observing. But I mean, I live at home with my parents. They're both white. I mean, I have Black friends, but I'm not with them constantly. I personally don't see racism. I don't see the kind of effect it has on someone. So I love reading your blogs and editing them, because I do get to see it through like a white woman's perspective, because I can resonate with a white woman, because that's what I am. So I really enjoy that.
And I think that's why I want to use my platform, because I'm in such a fortunate position to be able to have those conversations and safely, and I know that if it's too much, Ken will say, can we just drop it, or be open to having those conversations, so I don't feel so under pressure to kind of say the right thing or the wrong thing, and I can own that I'm going to make mistakes, and then use that information and that knowledge to help kind of share.
Definitely.
Because like hearing Ken's experiences for the first time, like we both got upset, like hearing that, and that for me puts me in a position where I can relate to racism, like Ken says, and I will absolutely agree with. I will never understand it. I'm white, but I can relate to it because I'm with Ken and I love him, so I see how these experiences will hurt him and how he has to live with it. So I view it as my place to kind of share that, so people can relate to me.
And get that insight. Because I think what happens is, and I think there's a definite thing. I think there's like there's almost like two types of people when it comes to talking about race or anything that they're not comfortable with. And it comes to like the ignorant person who wants to remain ignorant and is happy to not learn or do any better. And it's someone who's ignorant, who just doesn't know, but wants to learn. And, you know, if I say something, they may not hear it or want to hear it or get it, but if it's come from someone who looks like them, like you said, you know, if Joe tells a story, you can see it through a white woman's lens. You can get an insight, which is might be your first steps into it. So it's that thing of, you know, just trying to communicate and get stuff out there and, you know, figure it out as we go.
Yeah, and I think it will hopefully help to break down stereotypes and things.
100%.
Because I love like learning about your culture and just sharing interests and stuff. Because I myself, like, we've had conversations about how I relate more to your culture because we like the same types of music, dancing, you know, not necessarily, you know, like an African culture or a black culture, but because we just relate to so many things. I guess it's easier to explore things like African food or music or black humour.
Whereas other people that have that insight, you know, so if we talk about kind of comics, like Kevin Hart, for example, or like Chris Rock or whatever, you know, their humour isn't for everyone because they're going to say some stuff that white people won't feel comfortable with, which is fair enough, but it's like...
Yeah, there are a lot of jokes about interracial couples.
So there's a joke, but underneath that joke, there's a lot of information, there's a lot to learn from. So it's like, you know, we've naturally, you know, we've been able to share that and experience that together, which has been amazing. So we're lucky we have that. We want to try and use that to make the world a little bit less racist. If we want to call it that.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're doing an amazing thing. How can people connect with your blog and your community that you're creating? How can they find you?
So on Instagram, it's Interracial Space. On Facebook as well, it's the same thing, and on Twitter as well, it's Interracial3. So that's where you can find us. And also, if you type into Google, interracialspace.co.uk is where they can find us. That's where we are, really. Yeah, that's it, really, isn't it? Nowhere else. We might go on YouTube one day. Who knows? We'll figure that out. Too much technology.
Is it the interracialspace.org.uk?
No, it's .co.uk.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. Ken knows it.
See, you looks after the website, can't you?
No, but that's amazing. And I think it's really going to be exciting to follow your journey, especially where you're kind of thinking about, like, well, you're planning your wedding, and then you've got your kind of potential children in the future, and you've got all of this stuff, which is going to be amazing to follow. And I think you're just going to gain pace as you keep going, which is going to be so exciting to watch. So I cannot wait to see what you do.
That's amazing. And thank you as well, Becca, for your input.
Yeah, definitely.
You're welcome.
So kudos to you.
No worries.
It's been amazing. It's been great to have like an outside look on it when we're putting stuff together. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. It's been great talking to you. It's always good vibes. I like it. I call them earmuffs because they don't have earmuffs, but now I see them, so I will shout out now.
Well, thank you for joining me on this episode, and I hope it resonates with a lot of people.